This week, we continue our series on the book Mediated with author Thomas de Zengotita. I don't know the history of suicide. Have people always been killing themselves?
My guess is yes, they've always killed themselves, but there's always been kind of larger reasons for it than your own misery, like martyrdom. Um, and this idea of, just my personal distress is causing me to end my life. I don't think that you'd find a lot of that. Why do they take out all these other people along with themselves? Is precisely because they are demanding the attention they've been longing for and lacking.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you are welcome. You know the drill. Please subscribe, rate, comment, share, reach out, tell your friends, send smoke signals, whatever. We love your feedback and we want to hear from you. If you like our work and want to support us, the best way to do that is join Phetasy.com. You'll get access to behind-the-scenes content, outtakes, discounts on merch, and the ability to submit questions for some of our upcoming guests. Support your favorite scrappy little internet heroes at Phetasy.com. All right. I'm back with Thomas de Zengotita.
Busy.
So good to see you. I feel like it's been a while.
Good to see you, Bridget. It's
I feel
always
like
good to talk to you because you really get this book, which is
this book is like the
so
gift that
much
keeps
more
on
relaxing
giving.
and easy for me to talk with someone.
I swear every time I always prepare for our interviews by reading, and I'll take notes, and then I'll just skim the book again before we get going, and it's like something new jumps out at me every time. It's like a religious text.
Right. Well, this time you saw busy because you're so busy, right?
I know, but I actually I was reading the transcript from our last interview, and there were a couple, I don't like to leave threads hanging, and there were a couple of things from the identity politics, and we never covered Bill Clinton, which I think is,
Anything you want, darling. You just
I
lead
think
the way.
I think that is just such an insight that you had into the whole Bill Clinton thing that we can't just skip over that. But we were talking last time about identity politics, and I've been thinking a lot about, you were talking about the idea of there's always the new thing in this news cycle. And I mentioned the way that the discourse describes this now is current thingism, which is essentially whatever the next thing is that people are chasing down, and everybody becomes experts overnight in Ukraine, or then they'll become experts in the banking crisis. And
yes.
do you think that this will slow down the pace of people trying to keep up with the current thing?
Well, I don't think, from the point of view of the flood of information and imagery itself, it's not going to slow down. But from the point of view of people developing strategies for coping with it, they could, in effect, make it slow down in their own lives. And that's going to take either a kind of crisis of frustration and exhaustion that they or an extraordinary amount of discipline coupled with a little bit of understanding about what's happening to them, which I hope the book can provide for at least. During the years I was teaching the stuff that led to the writing of the book, I'd have a voluntary assignment at the end of each course, suggesting that any student who wanted to could skip the final paper. And if they would, sort of ethically really commit to this, try to live for a month without this stuff.
Wow.
And then we define what we meant by this stuff. Could I go to a movie? Can I use my cell phone in an emergency? And, yeah. So there'd be some compromise on what we meant by. But most of the people who participated seriously in this experiment were, I don't think stunned is at the how slow the world really is. You
Mm.
know, maybe not if you're caught in traffic in Midtown, but I mean, just in general, the way the day passes at the day's own pace, with you in it, is compared to the way the day passes when you're plugged in all the time. And the key to this is not just that you're plugged into one thing, you're plugged into multiple things. It's the
Yeah.
switching around that's ultimately the fragmenter here. And most, not all, but most of the students who participated in this found it, at the very least, just illuminating to realize how helplessly enslaved, is a little too strong, but how helplessly in the grip of this stuff they are. And the more perceptive ones were noticed how trivial most of the stuff they're involved with is compared to things that they really cared about.
Mm.
Uh, it's also important to notice that of all the kids who tried this, I say kids, but they were graduate students in their 20s too. Um, you know, I'd chat with people over it afterwards, and only a handful of them stuck to it. Most of them went back. But there were some, you know, there were some. I quit Facebook. I'm not, you know, people who really quit. Not, they still had a cell phone and they used it when they had to. But they didn't have a news feed, and they, you know,
Mhm.
they didn't, they used it as if it were a regular phone.
Mhm.
Uh, and so, you know, they could make dates and change appointments and stuff. I think a really simple way to understand this, and this will be ancient history for most of your listeners, but I remember the first answering machines. Okay, so now, and I delayed for a long time getting an answering machine until at one point, this is when I was first starting to get published, and I was some editor. I got, you don't have an answering machine, and she was angry, and I said, well, no, you know. And she said, that just means I have to call you back over and over again. And it was rude. I was being rude. And I realized that. I could hear it in her voice. I'm a busy woman. I can't afford to call you back over and over again.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, what had originally seemed to me like this kind of cool, authentic gesture, uh, it was just rude.
Mm.
And given people that, you know, I'm working with, who were busy, who were people with families. I mean, you know, real people. And that made me get an answering machine.
Yeah, you were inconveniencing them.
Yeah, I was, and I don't want to be rude. That wasn't the point. I was being rude, authentic me or something. Um, but that's just a small story. But what it says is, before there were answering machines, if you called somebody and they didn't answer, then either you'd have to call them back, or it wasn't important enough for you to go on with it anyway.
Right.
Okay? And that filter in people's, just that filter of, is this important enough for me to keep calling this person or not, cut down on the flow of stuff you had to deal with by, you know, I don't know what the mathematics are, but by a lot.
Mhm.
And the same is true. It's a little, again, these tiny little examples are more, you know, are kind of represent the whole phenomena, CC on your email. Oh, I better CC so and so and so. That means that all those people have to read this goddamn thing,
Yeah.
even if they don't really need to.
Right.
Whereas when you used to send a note to someone or a letter to someone, I mean, you had to really CC, as in carbon copy on a typewriter, and separate envelope and write the envelope and put the stamp, so you're not going to do that very often
Right.
unless it really matters.
Right.
So before this technology, there was a built-in filter that prevented stuff that wasn't really that important from coming in at us. That's just a tiny example from the kind of original days of all of this.
It makes me really think about your example about the answering machine is interesting because you weren't being rude, but it's now the perception is that you're inconveniencing me and that is rude because you don't have the latest technology, but it gets that way with everything.
Yes.
It'll be, well, why didn't you just text me back?
Yes.
It'll be, how come you don't have an assistant robot?
There you go. No, that's exactly right.
You'll get bullied into all of
but
this.
it's really what the general lesson this teaches is that at the end of the day, it isn't the technology itself, it's the way in which it forces us into a whole new set of social situations that didn't used to exist at all.
I know.
That's why I insist in some of the places in the book, and I got a lot of flack for this because it sounded over dramatic, but that we're really existing now on a new plane of being because of all of this. So
yeah, we're not handling it well.
And I'm going back to your original question: will this ever slow down? I think that if what we're talking about right now were to somehow become something that got taught or something that people, there's some kind of a social movement or, kind of not religious really, but it's some kind of quasi-political, quasi-religious commitment on people's part to downsize their lives to human proportions.
Right.
And of course, there's all, now here we go again with the options stuff, right? Because right now, people listening, at least a dozen of them were going, well, we have the simplicity movement, my friends in the simplicity, So, yeah, of course, that's out there. It's an option.
Right.
But of course, as soon as it's an option, then it's just part of the problem.
I mean, I've been just obsessed and rereading your book again, but obsessed with the AI because it's made such dramatic leaps and bounds even in the past couple of months. And it seems to be advancing at a pace that is clearly not humanly possible to keep up with. And we are not prepared. We're not prepared for this moving into an election cycle. We're not prepared. And it does feel like we've all been put on a ride and had no choice in the matter. And we just have to go with it because this is now an arms race.
Yeah.
So I was joking this past week. I'm like, you guys are talking about the culture wars.
Well
Like
put.
AI is coming.
Right. Well put.
We have,
Well put.
this seems quaint
exactly.
compared to what's coming.
Yeah, that's what's hard. It's so hard to get people to pay attention to issues of this kind that revolve around technology, even though they're ultimately social and ethical, when people are so preoccupied with obviously social and ethical issues, school shootings, all the things that justifiably take up human attention. But the fact that this stuff seems to be, that's the problem, seems to be a technological problem rather than an ethical and a social problem. at first
Mm.
glance. Like even when you just say AI, it says, "Oh, the technology is going to do this and that." No, no, we're going to let it do this, and
Right.
so on. And
Yeah.
again, I don't know if this helps. I'm a history nut. I think it's really important to realize that this feeling of having kind of got on board a runaway train goes back to the early 19th century, the very beginnings of the technological revolution, in the industrial sense of the word. Trains, train,
Literally trains.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and speed. I mean,
Yeah.
they went, woo, I can get to such and such a place in 2 hours, woo, and where it used to take me 2 days
Yeah.
on a horse. So it's in other words, this speeding up thing and the realization on the part of some people that they're kind of collaborating in their own disintegration by yielding uh, to the social pressures that are generated by the technology. It's just so important to understand, and so few people really get it. It isn't really the technology. That's why I told the answering machine story. That's making you do this. It's the social pressures that get generated by it. Now, if I had the time, which I don't anymore, but if I did, I'd take up your AI thing and I'd ask myself, okay, apart from the fact that it can write B+ papers in your college courses for you, uh, or write a passable love letter that you can edit if you're really busy and you've got 18 lovers. Uh, Apart from that, what kind of what's it going to do to what are the social pressures on us going to be uh, coming out of this transformation? And I don't know the answer to that. But if I were you, or other people who really care about this stuff in your generation, that's what I'd be looking for. Not, oh my God, look what it can do, but oh my God, look what it's making us do because it can do that.
And it changes so fast. You can't you have to think so big and beyond what is almost comprehensible,
Hmm.
because even recently they've released so much of the video and audio abilities, the deep fakes, which we'll probably look back and say these should have been illegal. Never should they have been allowed, but it's too late. They're out there, and all of the ability to generate these images, the generative ability of, and because the chips are getting so small and fast, like you said, the speed, it will be able very quickly to be applied in real time. So already we have the technology. Recently they had these TikTok filters come out, and they used to glitch if you would put your hand in front of your face. You could see that it was a filter. But the technology is so good now, it you can't even tell it's a filter. And now they have, this pretty soon, a lot of this kind of AI technology that can generate video and filters and all of these things, voices. You'll be able to apply that technology, for example, in a live stream.
I
You won't,
I see.
it, nobody, my big question that I've been wrestling with, and I think a lot about in relation to your book, which also seems positively quaint now, is what happens when no one believes anything that they see
Yeah,
or hear
yeah,
or read?
yeah. Well, what happens is what's happened so far, and whether the AI, if I again, I don't. God, it's just. Could I just step way back and say, address every serious thinking person? The single most important virtue for you as a thinker, if you want to be a serious thinker, is to know what you don't know and not pretend that you've got an answer when you don't.
Mhm.
That's just anyway. I don't know about AI, and I don't know what it's going to do. There are certain principles that I've got going, with some of which we've touched on. That, for example, it won't be the technology itself; it'll be the way it alters our social arrangements. But I won't. I guess can't pretend to know, you know, just how that's gonna work. And this thing you're saying about it'll be live streaming. I'm not quite sure what, but it almost sounds like you might be able to somehow one day you'd be supposedly talking to somebody, and you'll say, "Yeah, I get that. Listen, talk to my bot. What would you call it? Talk to my bot." And
Or even, for example, say I have the ability that I could make this recording go live. We could go live and it would be live on my YouTube, but now, for instance, I could take a filter and put it on my face and you would never I could go live and do every media hit that I ever did on the internet and have this filter on my face and you would never actually know what I really looked like. So there's one example of it. There's from a I could say, and now we're gonna go to Bill Clinton and have a generated version of Bill Clinton,
that
and that's good enough.
that would be indistinguishable from having him.
It's not totally indistinguishable yet. There were all of these photos of this a good example of this kind of happened last week. There was Midjourney is the kind of photo version of what's happening with the AI, the generative AI, where you can say, make me a picture of Trump, a photograph of Trump getting arrested. And because there was all this talk about whether or not he was going to get arrested.
Right.
Somebody made all of these images of Trump getting arrested. They weren't great. Some of them were really good. He was very clear about the fact that he was just making these for fun and made a whole story that ended up with Donald escaping from prison and eating at McDonald's. And it was funny. There was a whole thread,
Yeah.
but some people took it obviously as something that was happening and they retweeted it and it caused all of this outrage among, certain MAGA people who believed that this was real. And people were like, well, I can't help if they were stupid enough to believe it, but some of the images were really good. It looked like Donald Trump was being tackled by 5 policemen after he had made a run for it. And
Okay.
this is the beginning of this.
Yes.
We're at the dawn of
Beginning. Yeah,
this.
the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes. So important.
It will only get better.
So this is Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. You know about that, right?
Yeah.
He broadcasted on the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But it's on steroids and it's again, it's the fragmenting. Bunches of people will see these things, let's say just Donald Trump getting arrested and the story that follows, and bunches of them will go blah blah blah, and a lot of others will laugh, and then this group will believe it, and so there's it's will this ever slow down?
My feeling, not knowing anything, and I've heard a lot of these speakers, particularly the guy who is behind ChatGPT, Sam Altman,
Yes.
who I find terrifying, because he has some caution, obviously, but he seems wildly optimistic about a technology that we've already seen with social media get completely out of people's control. Zuckerberg lost control of Facebook. These people who were very optimistic about this just connecting the world and like it's gonna
again, this
usher in
yeah, no.
utopia.
And again, just to add this, I just add so much force to what you're saying. All right, this has been the case since the beginning of the industrial age. Whenever all these inventions, the inventors of the internal combustion engine were like the inventors of atomic fusion and fission were, there's a real huge ethical issue that I don't quite know how to compartmentalize so that it really hits people who are responsible for making this stuff and makes them realize that their responsibility isn't just to make the goddamn thing so that it works. It's to really think about what the consequences are going to be. And
It's
people who are technologically adept, it's like being a great athlete or something. You just can't stop yourself.
It's more than that, though. I mean, this is like Jurassic Park, that famous quote where he's like, they were so concerned with whether or not they could, they never stopped to think about whether they should.
There you go.
It's
That's exactly what I'm saying.
this is this seems to be a very human flaw of ours.
This is the power factor in creating a technological extension of your own vision of something, making the thing and it works, and then you watch it and it's like your child, it's like your legacy, it's like you out there in another form. The narcissism that's involved in the creation of the technologies for the people who create these technologies is irresistible. And
Mm.
Zuckerberg and all the people you mentioned are examples of this. And I don't know what happens when you confront them with it, but it could. That would be interesting. You could no, I'm serious. If you could think up some way to get a little panel together and confront some of these guys in a group.
They've been I mean, I watched Lex Friedman did an interview with Sam recently, and they
No,
had
no,
a good
screw interviews. I'm talking about a retreat for 3 days, and everybody takes their shoes off, and somebody presents the problem, and people dig into why did you do, what is it about this that makes it so irresistible to you? I'm not saying it would lead to anything more than a deeper understanding of what's making people do these crazy things to themselves, but it's clear that now I mean these creators of stuff, of technological devices of all kinds, going back to the locomotives and automobiles and so on, are obsessed with their productions and are lose sight of everything else. And they're brilliant.
yeah.
And
But
then
this
and
is like asking an addict why they're an
that's
addict.
right.
There's
And
no answer to it.
well, I don't know. I don't know enough.
I mean, I'm as someone in recovery, I can tell you if someone said, "Why are you an addict?" I
Yeah,
would not have even during my addiction, knowing the harm it was causing me, self-inflicted, at the bottom, most a lot of people still can't stop faced with losing families,
yeah,
with
yeah,
losing
yeah, yeah.
so I this has always been something very human that I don't fully understand. I think a lot about suicide and how it seems to be very like I always joke that my suicide note would be "fuck you, Darwin," like it seems to be very not eh, very antithetical to the entire idea that everything in us is programmed to survive. That
Oh
just
yes, yes. Oh,
that
that's such an
self-destruction.
important observation. I mean, that's just such an important observation. The survival part of the instincts we've got, like let's say the instinct to assert, to the anger or defense, but the ways in which you go about satisfying that very primal instinct, like don't hurt me, I'll hurt you, instincts at that level, they don't think ahead.
Mhm.
And the idea that they're designed somehow to serve survival might have worked when we were all primates without language on the savannah, although even then there are problems with it. But when you take the kind of primitive instinctual apparatus that we're still born with, I mean, that hasn't changed evolutionarily speaking. We're still those primates. But now you're born into a world where those instincts get to express themselves through all these elaborate productions and arrangements, and there's no rational linkage at all between the two.
Mhm.
And you get this. Why don't addicts know? Well, it wasn't really an addiction, but I've had some dependency issues, let's say, on stuff. Um, but I think I'm pretty clear. I want to dull the pain.
Right. I mean, I think I can reverse engineer many reasons for why I was caught in the throes of addiction, but I don't know that had you asked me when I was in the thick of it
Hmm.
why I couldn't stop or why I was an addict, if I would have been able to give you a good explanation.
Why isn't I want to dull the pain a good explanation?
Um because I don't so if you're a junkie and you're homeless and you're like I'm saying taking an extreme case of addiction, you've got a DUI
A lot
and
more pain going on. Yeah,
you're causing more
yeah,
pain.
that's what I'm
So
getting at.
it seems like a bad if you're like, "Oh, I just wanna numb the pain," because you're,
Yeah.
uh I mean, I think I understand a lot of people understand that, but I think if it's somebody
Let me
who's
just interrupt to say that if we have not wandered off the topic here, because we are talking when we talk about the development of these technologies about something that where the analogy with addiction is very very powerful and
Oh, we're all
potentially,
hooked on dopamine,
yeah, yeah.
all of us.
So so don't lose sight of that. So if we were to gain some kind of general insight into how people can cause themselves more misery than the thing they're addicted to is giving them relief of, um, self-destruct. I don't. God damn it.
Yeah, it's very I mean, I think this is the stuff that I think so much about is that self-destructive instinct in humans. And I'm not sure if it's just with more convenience and less need to survive that instinct has increased. I don't it's something I'd also like to read into. I don't know the history of suicide. Have people always been killing themselves? Or is this
Good
something
question.
that's
Very good
new?
question. Really super good question and an answerable one too. Some serious student of history could take that up. And my guess is it's just a guess, but just from my scan of what I know of history, my guess is yes, they've always killed themselves, but there's always been kind of uh, larger reasons for it than your own misery, like martyrdom.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and this idea of just my personal distress is causing me to end my life. I don't think that you'd find a lot of that if you go back over other cultures. And I don't know. I don't know. It's a research question, but if not, then what the hell does that mean?
And now the kind of extrapolation that we're seeing even recently as of, this horrific shooting that just occurred,
Yeah,
the desire to take other people out when you're killing yourself. So, my pain is so great, I'm going to kill myself and other people children. Like, that's another level of this that I don't understand at all. It seems so, this is and I know that this is not off topic either because this seems like a product of narcissism and
yeah,
mediation
exactly,
and
exactly,
all of these things wanting to get attention and wanting to,
exactly, exactly.
this
You just did me when I mean you just answered what you just said what I was going to say. the answer to that question, why do they take out all these other people along with themselves, is precisely because they are in demanding the attention they've been longing for and lacking uh, from not only the people they're killing, but everyone else who's going to witness it. They're finally going to be famous. They say this.
Yeah.
I mean, they just say it.
It feels like a sickness. There's like this kind of stuff. I was thinking somebody was saying this the other day. They were older and they're like, I grew up in the Midwest and everybody had in the 70s, everybody had, rifles on their racks outside high school. And there wasn't this kind of like Columbine thing that started in the 90s. And there is, everybody talks about the guns and everybody talks about whatever things come up, but my question is always, what the heck is going on that this sickness is it's like something in the water, and it's not. It is this. I know that it is because I was the last generation to live without these constant, manifestos and shootings for attention, and this is something that didn't exist, and it's something
Now,
that
this is where
became a thing.
we are really we're circling back to home base here now. It's the need, instinctive need for acknowledgement and recognition, which we really are born with. We want attention, and that's has been hijacked by the media environment. It's the same innocent, sort of justifiable instinct in any, even animal. Acknowledge me. I'm here. One of my favorite. I think I've said this before on your show, but one of the most interesting anthropology teachers I had, he used to say, and he didn't understand all the implications of this from the media point of view, but he used to say, everyone is famous in a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that in, a small scale community where everyone knows everyone face to face, everyone is known by everyone else and acknowledged and recognized. Now, are some people more important than others and better liked? Of course. But at least you're known. And I think the deprivation of the need to be known in your world is probably, somewhere deep in the mix.
There's just this entitlement.
Yes.
As if we deserve
That's it.
to be known.
No, but
That
the tragedy of this is that you do, in effect, originally, given your instinctual apparatus and the kind of social setting that you evolved in, in a tribe, you are entitled to be known.
But there was
Banishment is the worst punishment
right.
that can happen
Right.
in that setting, right?
But there was shame.
And yes, shame.
We don't have. I mean,
No,
this brings me to Bill Clinton.
It sure
because
does. Shameless, yes.
Because I've been thinking a lot about this idea of current thingism and shamelessness. Like I see this with pundits where I do a lot of talking and I get a lot of stuff wrong, and I'll make predictions and I'll get things wrong all the time. And I try really hard to take stock of what I'm getting wrong and what I'm saying, but I am not famous and I'm not making a lot of money. And part of it is because I think I'm not shameless enough, and that I will look at other pundits and they can get everything wrong constantly. They can consistently be wrong about all kinds of things, and they don't have to really stop and reflect because our culture is so next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing. It doesn't matter. There might be somebody online who holds you to task, or somebody might do a thread on Twitter about all the ways that you are a hypocrite and contradict yourself for every single thing. But no, they don't care. If they don't care and keep moving, it doesn't matter. Exactly. And this was something that I really loved. It was something that just struck me so much in your book when you talked about Bill Clinton and the State of the Union and how everybody was watching it like, "Can this motherfucker pull it off?" Pardon my language.
Yes. No, no. The awe that people felt, especially other politicians in that setting, because before Bill managed to salvage his presidency in the face of traces of semen on an intern's dress was just unthinkable that you could pull that off.
Unthinkable.
Yeah. And yet he did it. And he did it not only because of his shamelessness, of course, but because his shamelessness, if we're calling it now, about sex, was actually an expression in a lot of ways of the general kind of freewheeling attitude towards sex that the 60s generation was all about. His generation. So, in a weird way, the ethos of sexual liberation that was the kind of one of the major themes of the 60s uh, kind of enhanced, facilitated the rise of shamelessness.
Yeah.
And that's an irony for us. I mean, by us, I mean us good guys. I mean, because we don't want to have a bunch of puritanical, repressed whatever. Um, but on the other hand, you can't have that without a certain amount of shamelessness. So
Yeah,
what are you
that's
gonna
true.
do? One of the reasons you're so good with this book is because you don't care, or at least you don't care that much about the fact that I don't have any solutions in it.
No.
Yeah, exactly. But I can't tell, that last chapter, the title is Why I Am Not Giving You Any Lame Predictions and Lame Solutions That You've Been Trained to Accept as a Reader of Social Criticism, or whatever the title is. I can't tell you the pressure I came under
I get it.
from agents and publishers. Well, what's your solution? Or
I'm in the same
yeah,
position.
yeah,
People, I'm trying to sell a book and everybody wants me to have some kind of like bow that I wrap it
yeah.
up in. It's like I don't know, how do I explain my life to my daughter? There's this question that I have because so much of it is public and
Right.
I want to be able, I mean, talk about mediated. I kind of want to be able to control the narrative as much as I can. Um, and there's this idea of like, well, why don't you write a book for young women who are trying to navigate, because this all came about because I wrote this piece, I regret being a slut, and it went huge. And it was one piece and it's reflecting on one part of my life, but that's just one portion. There's a lot of stuff that I was reacting to that I still feel like it was right for me to be reacting to. I was there. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is feminism. This is the sexual revolution. It's let women down." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I was also reacting to the like psychotic upbringing that I had with Catholicism and all the weirdness there too. So it wasn't just." And people are like, "This is what happens when you're a mom and you have kids." I'm like, "Well, no, I felt this way before I was a mom and had kids." Like, people wanna put all kinds of things on you, and they want publishers in particular want a solution, and
That's right.
I I mean, I'm very much like my favorite one of my
I wonder
favorite
how
quotes.
I wonder how many of us just in that way there are. How many of us are out there writing and commenting, talking, books, articles, shows without solutions?
Or without trying to
Yeah,
persuade,
yeah, 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 yeah.
there
Who? But
there
I
that
answer.
seemed like something that seemed like, I don't know, that I'm not sure that.
People literally go, "Oh well, I'm not going to listen to your whole diagnosis and analysis of this important thing is of no interest to me if you don't have a solution at the end, even if it's true
Right.
what you're saying."
But they'll dismiss you
What's
for
that
other
about?
reasons. Yeah, I don't I lo and this seems like something in the '60s that was very one of my favorite quotes is Jack Kerouac's, which is, "I have nothing to offer the world but my confusion." And maybe I'm just more of a beatnik in that sense. I don't feel I
Yeah, there's
have
a
the
lot of
answers.
beatnikness in this.
Yeah, I don't feel in your book too, I sense,
No, you're
because
right. You're right.
there was this sense that you didn't have all the answers and that was okay, and now there's this almost demand for certainty. And I'm not sure if it's because the world is so uncertain, people are just needing that, like, everyone's become like a child in that sense, but there does seem to be a demand for, um I think it also goes along with people being more tribal and the polarization that's occurred. People just want they wanna know where they stand.
They
Because, like,
also
this goes back to my question,
yeah,
if you don't know anything,
yeah.
it's gonna somebody made the point to me that they think that us not knowing anything, AI, it's actually gonna polarize people even more because you lean into those factory settings and that tribalism because you do know that more when you're feeling uncertain.
Yes. Um, the feeling uncertain thing needs a little unpacking. I think it's not only that people need to feel certain, as in uh, my life has a structure that I can take for granted, and in especially in the cases of people who are out here writing books and being pundits, you want to have authority,
Right, right,
and you and
and that
authority. You want to have authority, and to feel like you're and that you believe in your own ideas, and then you sort of instinctively knowing that people are going to look up and listen and buy your book and argue about you more if you provide the kinds of recognizable positions that can be part of the space of argument, of discussion. And if you're
right,
just if you're just saying this is what's happening, then in a way, that adds to the confusion. My God, I'm
right.
suddenly remembering, all the little, God, those events you have to do when you're, shelling your book. And these people going, but what do we. And then if I couldn't tell them, that it was like you're wasting my time.
It's interesting because I've been thinking a lot about this too. Um, Part of the reason I always feel very insecure in the weird media space I've fallen into is because I don't feel I have any authority, and people really do want that. They want you to take a position, they want you to take a stand, they want you to be like, the commies or
Yeah, no,
like
absolutely,
the
absolutely.
cards or whatever.
Even if they're not going to agree with you that they want that, because then at least it's a recognizable thing, and then they go, "Oh, I know what I'm going to say about this."
Right. And I mean, I just don't feel like I'm in any position to have any authority, and then I think maybe I should get some self-esteem and have more authority, but it just doesn't feel it doesn't feel natural.
That's one of the several things, including desire, that it's really hard to invent. I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have it, and it's really hard to make it up.
But,
Oh
this
God,
is also goes back to that idea of shamelessness. There's a lot of people who have a lot of authority, a tone of authority, speak with authority.
that's right.
There's this rise of it's a verbal tick I noticed
Yeah,
that a lot of pundits do where they finish every sentence with "right." Where they'll say, blah, blah, blah. Academics do this as well. They'll be talking and they'll say, right, right, right. And it's like, well, no, I'm not going to agree with everything you say, but it does kind of demand a certain amount of
yes, yes.
authority. They're basically saying, I'm right.
Well, usually that expression usually pops out while they're kind of like building their case. So if if you go right to this thing and then this thing and that, then you're going to have to agree with the big thing, the solution that they're going to have at the end.
But they're not actually asking,
No,
"Do
no,
you
no,
think
no,
I'm
no, no,
right?"
no,
They're
no.
more asserting it as a
It's,
question.
and habitually, it's a tick. They're not
Right.
thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that's something that's been interesting for me to observe as well in this weird space because I like to watch language and those kinds of ticks just I always stand out to me. And there's an essay that I wish you would write, but I know you don't have time, but maybe I'll write it about how we're all kind of mainlining flattery. And this is
Yeah.
something else that I mentioned that a thread that we left behind that I wanted to pick up in
Well,
our
that's
last 10
a
minutes.
major theme of the the whole book is this mainlining flattery. Yeah.
Right, and I wonder because I asked you last time about this concept. Have you heard of this concept of audience capture, which I'm sure you can just infer based on
Yeah.
what it's called.
Yes.
And I was talking to my husband this past week about or a couple weeks ago about, trust in media and how when we were kids, CNN and all of these places, maybe they had an ideological bent, but it wasn't quite so obvious. But they increasingly, and you see this with the Fox
That's right.
Dominion
That's right.
case,
Yes.
they're
No, you're right.
increasingly being pushed further to the fringes by their own audience.
Yes. Yes.
So even not just independent journalists, not people who are online as pundits or people who are writers or I think on an individual level, because of social media, we're all kind of victims of audience capture. I could be wrong.
No, no, no. I like this.
So
But
it's not just like the,
yeah, I get it. I
people
get it.
making dollars
I
from
get it. I get
this.
it. Let's uh, go on offense by completely surrendering. Um, why can't there be an audience that's ready to be captured for people who want to talk about the psychological, social situation that we're all coping with, who don't have a bunch of solutions? Why can't there be an audience for that?
Right. I think that is the majority, really. I think most people
Well, then
are
why the hell am I'm not famous?
you
Or
are too
you?
far ahead of your time.
No, 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 no.
I think actually the best representation of the person who has captured this audience is Joe Rogan because his audience is all over the place and they're Bernie bros, they're very diverse whether
Really?
people want to
No.
believe that or not.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah,
say
very.
when I first told my wonderful son that I was talking to you, and then I mentioned that you something of Joe Rogan, you just been, and he went Joe Rogan, and so I mean his whole picture of Joe Rogan is a right wing asshole. Now I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying that's his picture.
My my question to him would be, have you ever listened to an
No, of course
entire
not.
have you seen him talk
No, of
for
course not.
more than a clip that
No,
you were
no,
distributed by
of
the
course not.
left-wing
Of
media?
course not.
Yeah,
Oh
and
God.
this is
And
part of
I
the
haven't listened to
problem
him at all. So, but
because he's been told what to
no,
think
no,
about
no.
him.
I don't have time to listen to anybody but you. I don't know. I'm seriously. I
No,
just
not you, I'm saying your son has
yeah.
been essentially
Yeah,
told
no,
what to think
yeah,
about
yeah.
him.
No, I'm sure he hasn't spent a lot of time. Let's be honest. He's going to hear this. I'm sure he has not spent and would himself admit that he has not spent serious time listening to Joe Rogan, and he's just going on his reputation.
Yeah, but I
Um,
think there's a reason that people don't want to consider for his massive popularity, and it's because Joe himself, he'll make statements and have opinions, but he's oftentimes admits when he's wrong and says that he's
all right.
confused and
Well,
doesn't know.
that's very impressive. That's what that. So he'd be part of this imaginary club of.
He's not I mean, the
No, no,
guy
no. I'm
I
imagining a.
a
I'm going
club.
back to your audience capture thing. All right? So I'm imagining a group of social critics and commentators who do what, another one who does that, and he's very much on the left. But Paul Krugman or whatever his name is, and a very, obviously Nobel Prize winning economist with Princeton, blah blah blah. But his columns are full, and he does it on purpose to show the difference between him and his opposition, of moments when he admits he was wrong about the rent hike and admits he was wrong
Mm.
about this and admits he was wrong about, and that's, can we imagine a successful politician somehow going, I'm not sure, but my best guess is, given the advice I'm getting from people I trust, that we should begin to approach this problem, la la la. Who would have that tone?
I don't know. I don't see it.
I don't either.
I don't think they make it through. I think the people that make it through are the people who are, we live in a culture, and this is something that I've talked to so many people about on this podcast, particularly Lenore Skenazy, who wrote the book. She kind of coined the term the free range children, and we've talked about this before, but it we live in this time where everyone is appealing to authority. The kids are all in structured events. They run to parents to kind of, everyone seems, particularly these younger generations, to be looking to authority to resolve things for them, looking to the government, looking to politicians, looking to thought leaders, whatever that is. Even the term thought leader is a very strange,
It is
I guess
stupid.
they were like Socrates or something like that. Maybe were thought leaders, but they were just philosophers, I don't know. I think that when I think about kind of the being captured by an audience, whether we realize it or not, even if we're just an individual on social media, are there things that you're saying because I was thinking a lot about this, like with the lawn signs, because I was reading like the HOA stuff, and I was joking, and I probably do stand up about this, about how I know I'm getting old because I'm like, yeah, no one should be allowed to put all those flags out in front of their house. But I was thinking about this rise of lawn chatter,
Yes.
whatever we want to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
And it seems just like social media in real life. People are
Sure.
feeling like,
Oh,
I need to let you know.
there's no question. There's no question of that about that
Yeah,
connection.
I don't
I
want to
don't.
know what you believe in your house.
I
I
don't.
don't care.
Um,
But I was thinking, if you have that if you're used to doing that online, you're used to doing that offline, if you feel like a question or would you be inclined to even post it because you'd be worried that your, friends and family would turn on you, or would be like, "What do you mean
well,
you?"
you're not, right? Joe Rogan isn't,
No,
assuming he's what you're
but I've
saying.
had I do feel distance with certain family members because of perhaps the direction I've gone
All
in my
right,
life.
all right. Well, but look, the truth is, everybody could say that, whether they're a public person talking on, in public spaces or not.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of
So,
course.
but that hasn't, you yourself haven't felt as if you can't. I mean, I felt like I'm not going to talk about some very specific thing that relates very specifically to a personal problem of somebody I care about. I mean, I have done that, but general thematic things, never. I just, and I don't think you do either. I'm acknowledging what you're saying, that it's true that people are captured by their audiences, by, it's just kind of this unconscious. Well, it's just like the whole debate at Fox, about after it got revealed that they all knew that the election wasn't stolen, and they kept broadcasting stuff that made it seem as if it was. And
Because their audience
within
wanted
the
it.
Fox organization, there was arguments.
Yeah.
about that. But they went on anyway because, and the phrase they used, talk about audience capture. The phrase they used was the we have to respect our audience. So the way you respect your audience is you tell them the lies you know they want to hear.
Ugh, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, this is what my husband and I were talking about because we were talking about kind of Fox versus CNN, like mostly peaceful protests, which is a blatant lie in front of a clear, clearly something that isn't true. But we were talking about, is it worse if you believe the lie
Yeah.
or if you know the lie is false?
Right.
Like, which one's worse?
Right.
If you're an ideologue who just believes the lie, or if you're somebody who's just telling somebody what they want to hear and you somehow justify that. They both seem bad. We live in this kind of time of
Except for the danger factor, I'd go for the person who really believes it. And I say that because the person who really believes it will continue to say it, even if it becomes manifestly dangerous. In other words, the person who doesn't really believe it is more likely to change their mind if
right,
circumstances. But whatever.
right. No, it's something. I know you have to go, so we'll wrap it up. But this has been fascinating as always, and I'll be thinking about it for the next 2 months until we speak again. And I constantly am thinking about this stuff. I'd like to get to a place where I have a little bit more time to sit and think and write about it because I feel and not put it in like
Yeah,
Chat
just knowing what little I know of you just from our conversations, I think you nailed it right there. I really feel that you need solitude and you need to write for yourself, no, not anybody else. Seriously write to yourself in solitude and just do it. Leave it at that, even if it's just 20 minutes a day.
Yeah, I've been doing these writing prompts with my community because I wanted to put something into the world that wasn't just like I wanted people to be able to be creative. So we've been doing a daily writing prompt, which is more of a slog than I ever could have imagined. Especially because I don't want to put crap out into the world, but it's been great because I don't know, it's wild. I never really know what comes up, but they have been helping me sort through things. It helps me to sort through old memories, and it does make me realize that the process of writing a book will be good for me just because I think there's a lot of information that I've taken in, particularly in the past 7 years since I've been stumbled into this culture war that I somehow want to make sense of. And that's what's so lost for me with the Chat GPT and the kids putting this in. I need to write in order to make sense of things. It
That's right.
forces me to
Exactly.
slow down.
Exactly. And the culture prompts are great, but you need your own private culture prompts in your own
Yeah.
private space.
Yeah.
Is my advice to you as a
Luddite.
slightly older fellow than you, who's basically
Well,
on the same trail here.
I look forward to
All right.
talking about busy, busy, busy next
Yeah,
time,
there
which is
you
the
go.
next
See, it feeds
chapter.
right in.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. Bless you.
It's time for the weekly check-in with Bridget and cousin Maggie. Well,
Hello.
hello. I got back from a big adventure.
Yes, Bridget's big adventure in Texas.
I'm so tired.
It's been a whirlwind. It really has. I feel like.
And I haven't been feeling well, so
No, you've
it's been challenging.
down and out. We've been
For like 2 weeks.
trying to set up. Now we have guests in town and we're still trying to set up. Like we set up today for your podcast and threw together a backdrop, which came out pretty well. Pretty happy with it.
Pretty happy with this week's backdrop. It's going to change every week, probably.
For the next several weeks while we figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, everything's new. Everything is new.
Yeah.
It's weird driving around and not knowing my way around.
Yeah, I know. It's really weird. Now I'm like pretty confident in knowing when our turnoff is coming up. Like I've picked out landmarks and I'm like, okay, I know where I don't need to like map quest my way back to.
Yeah.
But only from one direction because I haven't come back from the other direction.
Yeah.
Enough. So.
Yeah. It's definitely just a strange sensation to be unawares, and just even traffic patterns, all the things, all the things you take for granted that you know.
When I was in my last week of California, I was driving around like just on automatic and I was like, oh God, I know this area so well. You know, you just get to know the whole place where you're living. And it's like, that's not going to be the case anymore.
No, it's not. And it's so Texas.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like all these. We were driving back tonight, and all of a sudden there was like this Corvette that zoomed through, and all of the speed seemed dangerously way too high.
Yeah.
for the amount of traffic that there is now. Maybe back when Austin was like a small town surrounded by cow pastures.
Right.
It made sense.
Right.
But now it's residential areas and you're going 65 and turning off of these.
Like
it's
out
like
of a
insane.
Driveway into a 65 lane,
so,
like 4-lane highway.
It's nuts. And there was this car zooming in and out. It was a Corvette. And my aunt was like, oh, he's dangerous. I was like, there seems a lot of that here in Texas. And I was like, men having midlife crises. And she just started dying laughing. Like, that seems very Texas to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of trucks. It's fun.
A lot of pickup trucks. It's like everyone has a pickup. I could totally have a pickup truck.
I could really lean into, when I quit drinking, I was drinking Coors Light, and I'll never forget my friend coming in and seeing me and being like, wow, you're a redneck. Mm-hmm. Like, I never realized you are a redneck, and I could really lean into my redneck here in Texas. I want horses, and
I love horses.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, there's so much money and so much work. It's so much good if they're someone else's horses.
That reminds me of that time that was like your godmother, I think, who was like, oh, get a pony or get a horse or something. We were like, no one can just get a horse.
I don't remember that
It was
at all.
like something a rich person said.
Yeah.
You and I were
just
dying
get
laughing.
a horse. Oh, sure. I'll go get one of those.
They should just get a horse.
Yeah, so much money.
Yep. There's a lot of money in Texas.
Yeah, a lot of money. There's a lot of money in California, too.
Yeah. But it feels old.
It feels different.
It feels like oil money.
Yeah.
It's just different culture, different everything. And then we were at the Domain tonight, which is like LA. It's basically like going back to LA.
It sounded like LA.
Like, so we're
Jared
in LA.
was reading the description of what it was, and I was like, it sounds like an LA mall.
It basically was. It was LA. It was like, oh, so I'm back in Los Angeles.
But I can really lean into how friendly people are here. Like, just like
they're so helpful.
People, the checkout clerk at the store, we were chatting. I was like, oh, I just really like the general friendliness. Yeah,
there's definitely a sense of actual helpfulness too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm trying to do a lot of work and get back into the swing of working and still setting up and dumpster fire and feeling better. Yeah, which is whatever. Just annoying more than anything. Yeah, I have a 1-year-old child, and she's increasingly more active, and I'm not really sure how this is all going to work out.
How this is all going to play out.
Yeah.
I know. I definitely feel like, I think maybe I was a little shell-shocked the first week we were here. I was like,
I'm in Texas.
Now I'm like, I was saying that out loud to myself as I was driving home from my shopping trip earlier tonight. I was just like, I live in Texas.
I'm a Texan.
I live in Texas now. This is Texas.
Yeah. Moving it's always shocking.
It's big. This was a big move.
Yeah.
You guys bought a house.
It really was a big move. And I was like, we're doing this.
Uh-huh.
And then I got here and nearly died. Yeah. I don't know. it's just been, I feel exhausted, but I have to keep
A
going.
lot going on. Yeah. So we're working to get our legs under us, our feet. It's always, I think I underestimated how much, like all the work that went in on the front end. I think I underestimated how much work was going to go in on the back end of the move. You know, I was like, oh, this is the hard part. And I'm like, it was the hard part. It was really like getting over that hump of the move was like the hardest part, but there's still getting set up and trying to keep the business running and keep launching content and keep like up, but also feeling really behind on certain things that I've completely just like not been able to handle. So
well,
it's
and
just
then
like,
I might die.
and then Bridget's been on death's door for like 2 weeks. So
which has been the worst because it's just always so different. And Jaron and I were talking about this on Factory Settings, the difference in what you think something's going to be versus what it is, where I'm like, I'm going to move there and I'm going to get so much energy and I'm going to be like on stage on night 3 that I'm in Texas. And it's just like, I've been dying. I'm dealing with the horrible fucking healthcare system that is basically everywhere. That's what it's most of America. Only in California can you get individual PPOs apparently, really.
wow.
So I didn't know
realize
this.
that. Because I loved that. That was one aspect of California I loved, having a PPO.
Yeah, me too. And now I'm with the fucking plebs and the HMOs. And like, how does anyone deal with this shit? I don't understand.
I know.
I don't get it. It's like, what? I need a what to get what? I'm going to be dead by the time you fuckers figure this out. And then it's like, yeah, that's what happens to a lot of people in America.
Yeah.
They die waiting for a referral.
Oh my God. That's horrifying.
Horrifying, but true.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just figuring it all out.
So I wasn't expecting that on my first week.
Yeah.
It's like God laughing at me. My aunt was like, do you miss California? I'm like, well, I miss my doctors. Didn't think I would ever say that, but yeah.
I know. It's definitely going to be interesting to start like go socializing, branching out, like finding friends. I'm going to have to go make some friends, do it all over again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be good. Get a nice feel for Texas.
Yeah. What I've also learned is that rich people give horrible advice.
Because they're so used to being rich.
They're just attached.
Oh, just build a room or buy a horse. Like, here are the solutions to your problems.
I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have listened to a rich person and taken any of their advice. No, it's week 2. Week 2, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Week 2. 2.5.
2.5. Yeah.
Coming up on 3 weeks.
3. We haven't even been here a month yet.
And I'm like beating myself up. And I mean, it's actually shocking how much we've got done considering how much time of mine is spent like waiting, talking to fucking doctors who are, oh God, the healthcare system in this country, honestly, it is atrocious. And I'm not saying socialism's better. Whoever's listening to this getting pissed off right now, because I know you've got to wait a shitload in that system too. And people die in those situations. And I've had friends who have had shit luck in the UK and stuff and have bad things happen to them. So, I mean, it's just, it is one of the things about California that I took for granted.
You appreciate now.
Now that it's too fucking late.
I still remember when I first moved to LA and we went out and met up with some of your friends who were living there. And I was like, oh, I just moved here. They're like, oh, how long have you been here? I was like, 3 days. They were like, 3? You really did just move here. And now we're going to look back. And then I was thinking about that when I was leaving. And I was like 16 years later. Because the person who was like, just wait. 10 years will go by. Like nothing.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah.
So now
we're going
to be laughing about our 2-week check-in with boxes all over the place. When you die in Texas.
I'm going to fucking die in Texas. Right before we left, I had this revelation that I could die in Texas.
I know. Bridget told me, she was like, I just realized like I could die in Texas.
And then we got here and I was like in excruciating pain for like 10 days straight. And I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if I moved here and then I died?
Well, no, it wouldn't be funny for me, but it would be oddly hilarious.
Like immediately just died in Texas.
Oh, boy. Well, here's to a long and healthy life, folks.
Here's to a long and healthy life in Texas. Tune in next week for another riveting episode that will change your life, help you get out of your own way, and solve all the world's problems. I want to thank our composer, Jared Elias, my co-producer and cousin, Maggie, and all of you out there listening. This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.